Futurama comic, issue 53. After the crew reacts as if they've seen a baby at their workplace door, it turns out it's just a package. And someone's somehow surprised that it's meant for them to deliver. It's a box of Robo Bars, the energy food bars made for humans and robots. They make them with robot oil and cover them in chocolate. Only robots would like them. Leela's told to deliver the package by a note, and everyone stares at her, waiting for her to warn them that they shouldn't take this job. Leela says it's such a suspicious mission that she somehow assumed Farnsworth would say no to it, even after all the dangerous deliveries he's forced them to do. I don't think there's any delivery to say no to, so why would she think that? They've been expected to go to planets that actually sound dangerous right away plenty of times, so I didn't think she'd be that intimidated by the mission at this point. Farnsworth says $50,000 is exactly how much he needs to destroy those mutated sharks he dumped in the river last week that were thankfully shown scaring a jerk cop from earlier and destroying his boat. The ship drives past floating holographic road signs advertising some restaurants, but they need to get to Desoladia as soon as possible, and the ship loses power in an engine, and Leela thinks Bender did it by putting his feet up on the console when he didn't. The ship lands and can't fly anymore, so she needs to radio for help, but no one's receiving the transmission. It turns out there's wheels in the ship just in case, which is perfect for a time like this, and it's why I always had a hunch that Farnsworth wasn't being an idiot for having a spaceship that can drive. I just wish he told people right away that that's why the wheels would come in handy. Leela says there should be enough energy in the engine to get them out of the mountains so they could get reception again. I assumed the entire planet didn't have any reception. She's desperate. 2 hours later, she's disappointed, and somehow they consider eating the energy bars when they have to deliver them, and they'll obviously be poisonous for people to eat. The door opens, and Leela says those weren't energy bars. They're one of the most volatile nuclear weapons, and are usually put on a person's front porch in a lit paper bag by the Army of Earth. She says one of these nucleotopes must have fallen during the flight and detonated, which is what destroyed one of their engines. Bender considers using a flare so that someone might find him, but Leela ejects it and says everything within a 2-mile radius will blow up if fire ignites these things. And they wouldn't have survived this long if the whole box had tipped over. Why weren't they instructed to keep the box restrained to ensure the delivery would succeed? She says it's too risky to drive with these things in the ship because of how rugged the mountainous terrain is, so they'll have to walk to find help. She sees smoke and assumes they're near civilization, and still thinks they could radio for help there. It turns out a tent is on fire, and Bender's told to use the water hose kept in his chest. 1 minute the robots were about to eat, and the next thing they knew, an object came flying out of the sky shooting flames. Since the fire deactivated a robot in there, the robots are going to eat him, because they were built with fuel efficiency in mind. So they're designed to process metal. I guess it's too hard and expensive for most robots to be like that. And they usually get nutrients from abandoned spaceships, but now they're on the mountain. It's unique to see some robot cannibals, and it seems a little less horrifying this way. But I don't like that Fry mentioned the Richard Donner Party, because this implies that this is the story's inspiration instead of it being original. The robots are escapees from a labor camp run by cyborg coal miners, who wants coal because it's rare in most planets, and used for jewelry and a tobacco product. The robots were reduced to eating other robots because 30 of them escaped the camp, but they miscalculated how much fuel they'd need and soon ran out. Leela wants to know where the nearest labor camp is because their ship is down, and Bender explains how they ended up on this planet. Predictably, they're supposed to be their saviors because they're the ones that ordered the delivery. They knew no company would deliver nucleotopes if they knew what was in the box, and they can't send for someone to rescue them because there's too many of their kind left in that labor camp and they're not leaving without them. And the nucleotopes will be used to set their friends free. Leela's mad at him for lying to them, and says she won't let them have the package, even though Farnsworth wanted the money and she has to cooperate with them to get home. She's told that innocent robots are being worked to death, and he tells Leela that a lot of them have dreams. As I'm thinking that there was too much dialogue and not enough action a page ago, Leela's told that if she goes to the camp alone, she'll be shot on sight, and she needs food. And they have to drive the ship there when it's going to be dangerous with every bump. Since Bender is scared of the robots, Fry lies to them that he's going to go to the trash bay and finish compacting up useless battle bots, which tricks most of the robots into leaving, but not the Cyclops one. Why would anyone make a Cyclops robot? He won't have depth perception. Leela says there's space mountain goats in front of the ship, so Bender needs to move them. He thanks Fry for coming out there with him when he forced him to, and he still says no sweat, pal. Then they hear some rumbling that scares away the goats, and they have to run away from an avalanche and warn Leela about it. The ship goes over to a rickety bridge over lava, and Bender extends his legs and arms to make himself a bridge for the ship. And he's just fine with the ship's weight because he's really well built. He's congratulated, and he wastes time saying he's done with his mission when he clearly won't have a choice. The robots threaten them with weapons to force them to take them to the camp. The ship shows up there with a delivery, and the red box has the robots in it, who waste time talking. But they won't be shot because they want them alive to mine in the coal mines. The Cyclops robot shows off some nucleotopes and says to either let everyone go or they'll all die. One of the cyborgs wonders how they could have sent for these bombs, and gets told that he signed off on an office supply order a month ago. And he says he knew $10,000 worth of whiteout was suspicious. That's silly, but he wouldn't have signed it off then. Somehow the bad guy wastes time making suggestions to improve their working conditions, and the robot near the Cyclops scares him by telling his friends they can take them, and the robots start a fight, getting lasers shot everywhere. Leela kicks the bad guy, and it cuts past the whole fight, and the crew's on a mountaintop far away from the danger. There's an explosion, which means they won't get their money. Bender lies over them to protect them from the falling robot parts, and the ship gets sent over to them conveniently. Somehow Sculpto survived the explosion and not anybody else. Why is he built any tougher than the rest of them? He wants to be taken to his planet, but doesn't have any legs, so Bender just makes fun of him. Leela says that with the slave camp blown up, they can't radio for help. Sculpto says he wants his life to have meaning, and Bender holds him over his head, and Leela gets reception and asks for a tow. It seems really convenient that this worked, and they thought to do this. He apologizes to them as the ship gets towed, and offers them a diamond that he doesn't see as valuable because he's an alien. And he's so focused on getting coal. They smartly lie that it looks like junk to make sure he'll let them have it, even though he's already running out of energy. Fry says they'll give the professor $50,000 and then split the rest between them, and he'll never have to know. Wouldn't it be nice if they actually got to carry out this plan? Downer endings aren't funny. I wish I could find it funny. It turns out that since the tow is further than their membership pays for, the tow rat's have its money up front and wants $50,000. At least have him say it's $30,000. That was just cruel. Futurama comic issue 54. It turns out Fry needs to go to the bathroom because Scruffy never fixed the toilet after Bender told Fry to flush Leela's scrunchies down it. The toilet gets damaged from that, but not from Nibbler being flushed down the toilet in an episode. Leela says she found the interplanetary pet play because there was a great write-up about it in a pet magazine with an insulting name. Fry goes to the bathroom and Nibbler catches a scent and leads Leela away. Fry sees some fembots, and Bender pulls a robot dog out of his chest to impress them. One fembot has a rare dog, and Bender's dog's named after the sound his magnetized body makes when a fembot gets too close and gets stuck to it. I hope the robot dog doesn't need taking care of and doesn't have the ability to hate his life, because Bender can't be trusted. Then Leela gets knocked out unrealistically easily, and someone kidnaps her for being a mutant. So why is that person smart enough to realize she's not an alien while everyone else on her planet isn't? For most of the show, people assumed she was an alien. Fry realizes Nibbler is trying to warn him and Bender about something related to Leela, so he decides to look for her. Bender decides to call a tow ship to get them home because he thinks that'll be a waste of time. I guess his antenna just got the ability to do this because of Farnsworth. and needs good reception to do it. He cuts ahead to Fry back at work, and Farnsworth whines about him having the delivery ship towed home, and the two of them assumed Leela left the park to hook up with someone. Then wouldn't she have called him on her cell phone eventually? Hermes tells Fry that the ship's programmed to return to Earth if anything happens to Leela in 24 hours. I guess it detects her heartbeat in the ship every day and reports if she's not there one day, because if it had her tracked, they'd be able to find her easily. So they thought to have a heartbeat detector in a wristamajig, but not a tracking device. The reason they're justified about being angry is that the towing bill is overpriced, considering that all that the tower has to do is press a few buttons and drive to tow something. Farnsworth faints and Bender electrocutes him to save him. It's a pretty melodramatic reaction considering that he has tons of inventions that he could sell anywhere he wants, so he could become a billionaire anytime he wants. And Hermes fires Fry and Bender because he can't do anything without a pilot, even though there are references to Fry getting his ship driving license. He had a learner's permit for the spaceship, and he had to go to driving school, so they would just make Fry the pilot. Farnsworth is totally reckless enough to do that. Also, he could download piloting information into Bender's brain. He just wants to punish them because he's mad, and he's really not thinking it through. And right after he said they're fired, he says they'll be fired if they don't pay that towing bill they can't afford, and Nibbler's their problem now. So there's a news report the next morning about dark matter falling on commuters like lethal stink bombs because Nibbler was put on the balcony. Except Nibbler's a sentient being, so he wouldn't have done that, unless he's evil. Bender wants the comics from the newspaper and gets told that they need extra jobs to pay the professor back. Can't Bender just steal and sell the stuff he stole or already has hoarded, since he has the supernatural power of never getting put in jail? Nibbler doesn't like hearing that Fry plans on selling him to someone who'd actually like him, and Bender says that's a good idea to get the money. Too bad Farnsworth doesn't have a tracking device in Leela. Also, Farnsworth could have already had a clone of Leela or a robot made. As I wonder if selling his dark matter spaceship fuel is just too hard for him to do, or maybe it's taking place after the movie established that dark matter became inert and useless as fuel. It's impossible to believe, so it's very easy to forget that. Fry finds out from the newspaper that someone's selling Leela as a pet. Won't that person get arrested because of this proof that they broke the law? Mutants aren't even allowed to live above ground. How could it be legal to keep any person as a pet? At least that way a mutant would get to live above ground, so some of them would actually take advantage of this. Unless this is after the episode where mutants were allowed to live above ground. Finally, Nibbler talks to them, and Bender somehow thinks he could make the money from talking, even though he'd just be seen as yet another talking alien, no big deal. The only thing amazing about him is that he's considered a rare species. If he's a rare species, then most people wouldn't even realize that he's not supposed to be able to talk. He says he knows the prefix of the seller's number, and it belongs to the inhabitants of Westminsteria. Mysterious but competitive beings whose reason for being is to primp their pets to win universe grooming contests. They follow him, and he uses his third eye to summon a spaceship. It's amusing that when Fry says dark matter was falling from the sky, somehow not knowing it was his fault, Nibbler just says, that's over. It's smart of him to keep them focused and make sure they go in the spaceship faster. Leela wakes up on the other side of the galaxy with a steak dinner and wine ready for her in a pet shop. Hey, at least she's getting great food. It could be worse. It turns out there's plenty of other people trapped in the pet shop, even though obviously no pet show would allow people to compete in it as pets. And you'd think they would just have stray dogs and cats there, because obviously they would be a lot more marketable. Talking while being smarter than a parrot would automatically disqualify someone because that's cheating. And if that was the case in the story, these pet thieves would end up with the realistic embarrassment they deserve. The more unique looking someone is, the more likely they are to win the pet show. Morba looks on the bright side that he doesn't have to do anything, and other people agree, and Leela gets put to sleep with gas. Because she wasted time ranting about an escape she obviously had no way of doing. I would have been eating the steak the whole time. I just feel bad for her for not getting to eat it. Maybe it was all chewy anyways. Nibbler knows Leela's in the mall because he planted a tracking chip in her wrist thingy just in case, and honed in on the chip with his third eye. He says that in order to move freely among the Westministerians, one of them has to look like them, so he's gonna alter their minds so that they think Fry looks like one of them. It's impressive, but I'd rather see Farnsworth use a shape-shifting ray on Fry like I'd expect a mad scientist to have. He says he can't change his own appearance and save her alone because he needs his energy to control their minds. So he must stay in one place with complete focus. And obviously if Fry didn't go with this plan, he'd be captured and sold as a pet too. Then Bender falls asleep from all the talking. But if he hated exposition so much, he would have fallen asleep when those robot cannibals were jabbering too much. This must be a recent habit of his. Bender wants to go home at the first excuse he can find, maybe because he thinks she's a nag who doesn't like him. And Fry decides to check the back room in case they're bathing Leela. He sees a wrist thingy and assumes someone bought her, and the pet store owner doesn't know who she was sold to. And Nibbler says he doesn't have much strength to veil Fry's appearance. And Bender says to follow the kung fu fighting cries. Someone says they bought Leela for his son, but she fought her way out of the cage. That feels cheap. How could the cage be made of such flimsy materials? I guess she didn't break the cage, and just fought the person in front of her to escape. Fry searches for a few minutes and sees Leela without her clothes on. And she's told that Fry's look was changed, and she somehow doesn't believe Bender because he's just a pet, even though she's seen plenty of aliens with strange abilities before, like Zoidberg. And because she didn't instantly go with him, Fry's revealed and the weird aliens want to capture all three of them. Then after Bender offers them Nibbler, Nibbler flies over to Leela in a spaceship, who annoys them because she always says it's adorable. Nibbler tells Bender to throw his leash down to Fry, which grabs him in a cringeworthy way that'd probably kill him instantly. Why is Nibbler bothering to tell Leela how she got saved if he's planning on erasing their memories? And why did Fry think he can't go back to being Leela's pet when he was told by him that he always erased his memory of being able to talk? Fry finds it familiar that Leela's trying to get them to stare into his third eye, and Farnsworth shows up, revealing that he thinks Leela's always easy. Nibbler's already erased their memories, so they don't know what happened after Leela stopped at the pet park. It turns out Zoidberg's been missing for days, and he loves being on planet Westministria because he's being fed for free. And the story ends there, letting us assume that every story after this is in a different universe from it, because there's no reason he'd ever get home. In the next story, aliens take Zap's army prisoner and want them to work in a factory that produces sterilizing hand soap. Zap tells Kif to stay in the sick bay and reminds him that he didn't want him to risk getting the other men sick. Kif's mistaken for his secret weapon and threatened at gunpoint, but predictably sneezes on the alien, who wants to be cleaned with hand sanitizer. But the alien near him refuses to touch him, and all of the aliens run away from him. So Zap puts his arm around Kif and says he's putting him up for accommodation when they get home. He'd better. He's promoted to captain by the council, which surprises Zap, even though he saved more of Zap's men than anything he ever did. He's jealous that Kif's gonna get his own platoon and ship and says he needs a vacation anyways. Why would he get one because of this? Is that the standard reward for that happening? I wonder what needlessly sad, cruel thing's gonna happen to force Kif back to the old status quo. Even though we don't have to have that happen in a comic with no continuity. I'd be fine with seeing a universe where Kif is a captain from now on. Kif gets congratulated and thanks Commander Glab and says he looks forward to ushering in a new era of peacekeeping. I wonder if he won't be allowed to because it's an army and Zap is war hungry. He's sad that some people were rejected as soldiers when they seem as ready and able as the others. Ready and willing are redundant together. Let me guess. His inexperienced decision to hire these scrawny people will backfire on him. He's told he can't hire them. Wernstrom was told he can't see and has flat feet. Zoidberg was somehow stupid enough to eat his enlistment papers. Either that or he really can get nutrition from anything because he's an alien. And one of them was rejected because somehow the future of Earth still has a don't ask, don't tell policy. Kif hires them anyways, and it cuts to a few days later where they're still with him instead of Glab telling him he can't do that. So he is allowed to do this. He says he got a great deal on their new ship at a military surplus emporium. He's told to go to the Intergalactic Phone Directory headquarters on a planet Yellow Pages because it's being raided by some jerks, and the soldiers don't know what to do on the planet an hour later. The telemarketer are jamming their frequencies with unlisted sales calls, and Kif's told they're too pinned down with their backs to the wall to retreat. They wonder what's coming at them from the sky. Let me guess, it's Zap. Zap's ship tells the aliens over the intercom to retreat. Kif admits that his job was harder than he thought and gets a new assignment. He's shown a new lieutenant that he'll be serving under, and if he wants his old job back, he'll have to learn thigh massages like Randy does. Why does he want his old job back? The story ends with Zap giving all the unlisted numbers for the residents of Earth, and congratulating the alien on embarrassing Kif, and the alien says it's always a pleasure doing business with him. Is Zap a creator's pet? Because this isn't funny. This story was about the crew crash landing on a planet where robots are being forced to mine for coal as slaves in order to dangerous bombs to try to free their friends that could blow up if the ship so much as drives over a bump. They were very lucky that they were able to get that order because somebody knew that $10,000 worth of whiteout was suspicious but signed off for it anyways. After the heroes spend way too much time talking to the robots with nothing happening, they find out these are robot cannibals, which only leads to too many unfunny text bubbles about it. Bender makes himself a bridge to get the ship over a lava pit and doesn't get destroyed from its weight and be unable to continue the story for some reason, despite being much smaller than it. I assume he's able to get materials from turning the carbon dioxide in air into metal. How else can he get something out of nothing to extend his limbs that far with more metal than exists in his body? Nanomachines? And while eventually the camp's blown up, they do get the money from the delivery because of a diamond from a robot that magically survived the explosion and got sent over to them, and magically got them reception for them to call a tow, which the diamond also had to cover. I think they deserved to have a little extra money left over after everything they were put through. The first story was about Nibbler disguising Fry as an alien to get him to look for Leela after she was kidnapped to be a pet, which was somehow going on instead of being actively prosecuted. How did these guys know Leela was a mutant on sight when everyone else doesn't so that she can live on the surface? How are they allowed to sell people as pets instead of instantly arrested for it the minute they advertise it? Leela ends up escaping because a kid opened her cage and she climbed up a tree instead of continuing to run ahead, somehow, so she needs Nibbler to save her in a spaceship. Bender was annoying by being impossibly stupid, and while it was cool that Nibbler put a tracking device in Leela's wrist device to find her, it'd obviously be smarter to put it inside her, so that backfired, and it'd make more sense if Farnsworth put the tracking device in him, and used a shape-shifting ray on Fry. The second story was about Kif sneezing on an alien that tried to capture Zap and his soldiers, and causing the naturally germophobic aliens to run away screaming from him, which makes even more sense because who knows what kind of alien disease he'd have. So Kif gets promoted to captain, even though Zap was right that anyone with a cold could sneeze on someone. So it was hardly a good reason to promote him. Kif proved that he was inexperienced, indecisive, and scared as a captain in battle. Not that Zap never had cowardly moments. Zap makes a deal with the alien leader to scare Kif's group and then retreat when his ship would threaten them, which I don't think was necessary to justify the plot turning out like that.